Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome. Damn. God damn. Got a little snot in my mouth. A little congested still. From 2 days in the freezing
everybody.
cold. Yeah. From 2 days in the freezing cold.
That is what they call a bang up opening.
Yeah, bang up opening. Well, I have a zit on my face right here, and I got phlegm in the nose and throat. It's because I was out in the cold all weekend. And finally, I made a Jimmy Dore thumbnail. Thanks to Jimmy for putting me in the thumbnail. We did a Marianne segment and a Nikki Haley segment. And so my pretty face is in that thumbnail with a big fat zit right by my nose.
All right.
That's how I'll be known to the world.
You know what? I saw some people in the chat about this yesterday, and I realized we never really addressed this. I'm sure there's a lot of speculation. Why is Russ hosting the Jimmy Dore show? Why not Keaton? Why not both of them? So listen, I hope Keaton's not going to be hurt by this. I want to be really honest and frank. All the greats, Sinatra, Mozart, Leadbelly, Laurence Olivier, they all had one thing in common, and I've got it and Keaton doesn't. It's called unlimited availability. When you have unlimited availability, it really broadens your options of what you're able to say yes to. So there was discussion at the beginning of whether we would both go out there, of whether we'd alternate. It's just not. The fucking guy has twins, man. He cannot just pay. I don't even have a house plant. So that is why, for anybody who's curious.
I thought you were going to say, what do all of these big stars have in common? They tend to be shorter. It's true. Movie stars tend to be shorter. True.
Well, it is also the shortness, but I didn't want to get into a quality that you can't change. I didn't want to go identity politics about it.
That's right. There's nothing I
you
could
can't
do
change
about that.
your height, so I want to stay with choice, something you can choose. I mean, you can always get out the back, Jack.
Right.
Make a new plan, but that's not the choice you've made, man. That's not the choice Keaton has made. So that is why he's the wingman.
Well, not only have I not made that choice, but for those of you who missed the announcement, I'll make it again for anybody who may have missed it. In July, our dissident family will be growing by one. My beautiful wife, Amanda, is expecting again. And so that's what's going to be happening later in the year, in case you guys missed the news. So, yes, I am happily tied down. But, that does prevent me from going out to L.A. for a month and hosting the Jimmy Show. But Russ has been killing it there, and it's been a lot of fun sitting in. So we hope you guys have all been enjoying it. And we hope you guys enjoy the show tonight. We got a huge crowd here on both platforms, 900 in the YouTube chat, 793 in the Rumble chat, which means it is time for a 666 shout out. Big crowd in here tonight. Indeed. Absolutely.
I wasn't ready for that.
No. Excellent. We are doing our weekly Q&A tonight. I know we've had to shift things around for those recently because there was no show on Sunday since I was in New Hampshire on Sunday. So it's going to be a late night tonight. We got a tight show planned, and then we're going to hopefully be going over to Rumble for our Q&A by about 11 o'clock. And for those of you who can't stay up to call us, if you're a patron, a paid Substack, or a paid Locals member, we are having our first of 2 patron exclusive live streams tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. So a morning matinee for the patrons. That is a Rumble exclusive as well. If you are a Patreon member, a paid Substack, or a paid Locals member, you will get the email for that show bright and early, and then tune in 10 a.m. Eastern. Or if you are an across the pond supporter, that'll be a nice afternoon matinee for you guys. And so that's the plan for the next couple of days. But we have some news to break here to start off the evening.
Hang on, before we really get rolling, I didn't get to load any pictures in, so that's the best I can do.
That's a nice
beignet, hot chocolate, walking tour. You see, the funny thing is, if you're a tour guide, you're used to teaching yourself how to guide neighborhoods with these kinds of guidebooks. So then when you go places, that's the first thing you do. You buy one of those.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. All right, let me make sure I am queued up here. I am. So, folks, it is Tuesday night as we are doing this live stream. If you watched the clip version of this, you know this by now, but let's talk a little bit about this anyway, because I spent the weekend in New Hampshire covering the primary, and as soon as the clock struck 8 o'clock, pretty much, as soon as the clock struck 8 o'clock, pretty much, by about 8:01, that is when the second round of polls closed in the state of New Hampshire, and that is when the Associated Press called the race for the king himself, Donald J. Trump, projected winner of the New Hampshire Republican primary as it stands right now.
Although
as we are doing this stream, 36% of the votes in. Yep. Trump 53-4, Haley 45-6. The projected margin, Trump plus 11. So not the 20-point landslide that some of the polls were saying. At least not according to this pace. You know, that could change, obviously. But a solid enough win.
Here comes Ron.
Yeah, here comes Ron DeSantis at 733 votes coming out of retirement. A solid enough win to pretty much put this on ice. Yeah. A solid enough win to pretty much put the primary on ice. This was the place. If Haley couldn't win here, where is she going to win? This is the state that she made this big investment in. At this point, you really can't even say she looks good in South Carolina. I had a feeling Trump would blow out the competition in Iowa, parlay that into a win in New Hampshire, and that would pretty much be it. As of now, Haley is saying she is determined to stay in. That's kind of what they all say. We'll see if that happens. Because the other thing that was very favorable to Nikki Haley in this race was that it is an open primary. So a lot of Democrats and independents were able to vote for her. And as you saw in my video coverage, for those of you who watched it, especially the second Haley event I went to, not so much the first, but the second Haley event I went to, most of the people I talked to were actually Democrats or independents. So you talk about a state that was favorable terrain for her as opposed to a lot of the closed primary states where you have to be a registered Republican, where Trump does even better. At this point, the herd has been thinned to just Trump and Haley. So you can pretty much put the Republican primary on ice. And this just speaks to the staying power of Donald Trump. He really is the most significant political figure of our lifetime, I think, much more than Obama. If there is a... You know how there was the Reagan era, and then Obama was supposed to take us out of the Reagan era into the Obama era, but really didn't? I think you could safely say we are in the Trump era right now. Yep. He has commanded this party for now almost a decade straight. And if he wins again, that'll, stretch his reign to 15 years or so. He just has a grip on this party, and no one was able to break through against him. And, this victory here tonight may not be the total routes that some would have expected or hoped for, but it's plenty to make the case that nobody's going to beat him. I mean, if Haley couldn't beat him here, where's she going to beat him? At the end of the day, if you want to beat him, you got to beat him. You got to win. You can't just come close every time and say, we're getting there, we're getting there. No, she had to win here. She did not win here. And so we are, for all intents and purposes, in general election mode.
I still think, and this is not a Ron DeSantis thing, I promise. I still think this could be decided at the convention. I still think he could be convicted on one of his charges. I would not call this settled by any means, because you have factors at play that have just unprecedented. There are just too many things going on that are unprecedented.
Of course, but at this point, you could say barring any unforeseen developments, we are in general election.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, no matter who winds up the president, yes, we're in the Trump era, even if we don't wind up with Donald Trump as the president.
Yeah.
I've many times made the Reagan comparison, because being like a weird kid who was interested in what was happening around me in society, I remember the Reagan change. And if you don't remember that, you cannot imagine how drastically the entire culture can about face and go in a different direction. One day, it was John Belushi doing an ODing on heroin bit on Saturday Night Live. The next day, it was brown suits and Morning in America. It was, boom, overnight, it flipped. I think you're going to see something similar over the next couple of years.
In a sense, you already have. I mean, think about it. Think of what America was in October of 2016. It was Sarah Bareilles, say what you want to say. It was the Obama era. It was woke neoliberalism, woke imperialism, woke globalism. Things were getting worse for most people, but it seemed like the establishment had their grip on power. It seemed like no one was really worried about Trump winning, and it changed on a dime. As soon as the votes came in, right around 9:30, when Trump took the lead in Florida, everybody realized, oh, we're about to live in a completely different world than the world 5 minutes ago. So in a sense, it's already done that first change. Now, this second incarnation is, perhaps 8 years later, things only having gotten worse, which means it could be scarier, probably will be scarier. But in a sense, we've already gone through one real seismic shift all at once.
I think you're about to see what we have not seen that you saw in the Reagan years. There was a cultural backlash against a lot of the culture war positions of the 60s, where, even the boomers who had embraced them were very sheepish about it. They would make advertisements making fun of themselves, their younger selves, and the ideas they had, right? That has yet to happen. If anything, the culture stances have only gone further on the nominal left. I hesitate to call it that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Reagan came in and boom. If you were talking about free love and pot, you sounded like a moron. Like immediately that just became something that made you sound like, oh, you were one of those and you haven't grown up yet. That shift, I believe, is coming.
All right. Well, that's the Republican side. We also have some news to break on the Democratic side, because there is a Democratic primary happening tonight. It's got a big fat asterisk next to it because the DNC has decided that New Hampshire's delegates will not be counted at the convention this summer because New Hampshire went ahead with their primary against DNC rules. Of course, the DNC insisted that South Carolina was first on the schedule, but there is a state law in New Hampshire that they were not willing to change or work around that said they had to go first. So this is for bragging rights. Joe Biden boycotted the campaign. He disenfranchised the delegates, and he removed his name from the ballot, but he still won by over 50 points. That's the Democratic primary electorate for you. I have been making this point since the beginning of this show. The first blog post I ever wrote was Joe Biden and the insufferable weakness of Democratic voters. You have a guy who disenfranchised the voters, boycotted the campaign trail, and like I said, removed himself off the ballot, and these voters still went out and wrote him in droves. You see, Joe Biden, 6.6% on the ballot. I don't know why he's there. That has an asterisk next to it. But then unprocessed write-ins, those are Biden votes.
Right,
so if you add those two totals together, you got Joe Biden at 73
Dave
points.
Chappelle pretty hard. So
What's
some
that?
of those. I've been pushing Dave Chappelle pretty hard, so some of those could be.
All right, well, we'll have to wait for the final count.
Yeah.
But it looks like Joe Biden, at least 72.9% of the vote so far, for a guy who, like I said, spit in the face of the voters, told them, your votes don't count, I'm not showing up, and I'm not putting myself on the ballot. And the Democratic voters, this is how weak they are. This is how useless they are. You're going to tell me you can work with this party? Don't tell me about the DNC. Don't tell me about the media. Don't tell me about anything. It's not that those institutions are legit or that they play fair or that they're on the up and up. However corrupt they are is irrelevant, because at the bottom line is you have a party whose constituents enjoy being abused. They like it. They like it.
Kink.
It's their kink. Exactly. It's their kink. It's their kink. Democracy is just their safe word. That's all it is. You think they care about democracy? The guy did everything he could to alienate them, and they went and they wrote his name in anyway. How can you tell me that the problem with the Democratic Party is not the voters themselves after this? I'm sorry. You cannot make that argument anymore. This is it. This is it. I'm done having this argument with people. I'm done having this argument with people. He did everything he could to disrespect them, and they went and they voted for him anyway. So what the fuck? I mean, what do you want to have? What do you think is going to happen inside this party? What can possibly happen inside this party?
It's just mind-boggling. Like, can you imagine the thought process of somebody who would make a point of going out in that bitter cold weather to write in Joe Biden on principle? That's what they think they're doing. They're showing their support for Joe Biden against Orange Man.
Right.
That's the idea. That's what they
even though he told you to fuck yourself as loudly and clearly as possible.
Oh God, tell me to fuck myself again while I fill out the ballot, Joe. Oh my God, put in the State of the Union. Alice, massage my prostate. I'm almost there.
I mean, you talk about a pathetic group of people. You talk about it, and I've had this conversation, and people say, Keaton, don't voter shame. I'm not voter shaming the general voting public. I'm talking about a very specific cohort of the voting public. Democratic primary voters. This is the problem. This is the problem. It doesn't. You could win the argument. Marianne Williamson said at an event a couple days ago that I was at, she says, well, 70% of Democratic voters said they wanted someone other than Joe Biden. So you can't say there wasn't an appetite for someone else. Sure, I can't. Doesn't matter what they want. What they want is irrelevant.
They liked Bernie better than Biden.
Right. They like Bernie better than Biden.
All it took was Jim Clyburn to go.
Yeah, that's it.
Again,
that's
millions of people knocking on fucking doors in that fucking frigid state. Now you were there for a couple days. Imagine what those people did in 2020. All those door knockers in 2020.
Yep.
To have that happen in South Carolina.
Exactly. But at least in South Carolina, Biden was on the ballot. Here, he's not even on the ballot.
Right.
You can win. If you're the DNC favorite, you can take yourself off the ballot, boycott the campaign trail, and disenfranchise the voters, and they'll vote for you anyway. At that point, what are you even talking about? That's not a legitimate political party. I'm sorry. That's not a party. That's a cult. You talk about the MAGAs are a cult. This is a cult.
Well, there's no other explanation. Noticed, while there was still some wiggle room, while they still had some hope that maybe it wouldn't be Joe Biden, they expressed some independence. Axelrod went out there and said, maybe If you notice, there's been a distinct closing of ranks and shutting down of that kind of talk over the last month or two.
Yep.
Maureen Dowd had the temerity to suggest that these choices suck. And Maureen Dowd, I mean, if there's a more dyed-in-the-wool neoliberal shitlib in the press, I can't imagine who it is.
Right.
And even she couldn't get away with that.
Right. Exactly. Just incredible. There is a B segment that I want to do in just a moment, but let's just take a quick rumble rant here since it's related. Marianne Williamson saved the Democratic Party. Crystal and Kyle are awaiting a public apology. Thank you, Sloppy Top 10. Appreciate that.
You know, it's funny. That guy who did Freakonomics, he wrote a whole fascinating chapter about what's in a name and whether a name determines your destiny. And he found a case study of a guy who some sick bastard named his kids Loser and Winner. And of course, Winner wound up being a career criminal, and Loser wound up a cop. So, it's just one of those things. If someone put it in a novel, you would call it trite, but that was what really happened. But I got to say, I mean, Crystal Ball's parents kind of set her up to follow a guru around.
Right. Yeah. Crystal ball. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of blows that whole theory out of the water that there's nothing in a name.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. So, folks, you may have seen this piece of video in our special presentation on my on the ground New Hampshire reporting. We played the full version of this last night. But given that the New Hampshire Democratic primary results are in, and Marianne Williamson has placed right about where the polls had her at 4.4% as of 9:31 on Tuesday, January 23rd, with almost half of the votes in, I thought we should revisit this piece of video where I broke the bad news to her in the crowd that she was polling in single digits. And I didn't do this to antagonize her. I did this to try and make the point to her, but more to the people in the audience, that we need to abandon hope in the Democratic Party and harness the kind of energy that she's trying to generate in that room into things like mutual aid. And so we start here where I break the bad news that she's in single digits. And she didn't believe me because I'm just a New Yorker.
In single digits. I don't. You're down in single digits. I don't mean any disrespect by that. I'm just saying it's not necessarily because of the race you ran, and I don't agree with you on everything for sure. It's because of the party in which you're running. Look around. You got morons on the street here saying we're going to write in Joe Biden. Joe Biden's not even running in this race. He's got people writing his name in 60, 70%. So if we can harness this energy that you're talking about, and I have a lot of respect for that vision, if we can harness this into mutual aid networks with the understanding that we are not a voting majority, but we can harness this power in other ways to help each other survive the inevitable demise of this country, which we all know is coming, do we not? I mean, we feel it, right? It's going to be Biden. It's going to be Trump. It's probably going to end up being Trump.
You're reaching.
So there you have it, right? So what do we do at that point?
I am 100% not enrolled in your analysis.
Is that right? You are 100% not enrolled in my analysis that you're going to place in single digits and that Joe Biden is poised to win this race, even though he is boycotting the race. He's not on the ballots. He did not campaign at all. He is poised to finish between 60 and 70%. Let's take a look one more time. Unprocessed write-ins, those are Biden's votes, 64 plus 8.4. So he's actually over 70%. And Marianne Williamson at this point, no chance of breaking that double-digit barrier. So looks like the disruptive New Yorker was correct. But let's just show the rest of this receipt because I want to show you guys how not to fall for any of this delusional bullshit.
All right, fair enough.
So, first of all, 70% of Americans, 70% of Democrats have been saying for months that they wanted to hear from other voices than Joe Biden. So you can't say that there was no hunger.
90% of Democrats in 2020 said they supported Medicare for all. Only 30% voted for the candidate who supported Medicare for all. What the Democrats say they want means
well, that's
nothing.
what a lot of people said when this was playing last night. I was watching the chat. People were saying, "She's making your point."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Indeed.
What does she think she's doing here?
Yep.
For something else. As far as how
But they're writing him in, though. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish. But they're going to write him in. He's going to win as a write-in.
from New Hampshire?
No, I'm not coming from New Hampshire, but I'm reading the data.
Okay, where do you come from?
I'm from New York.
Yeah, that sounds like a New Yorker talking to New Hampshire.
All right, well, the numbers don't lie. I don't mean any disrespect, Marianne. I really don't. Go ahead.
No, but granite staters are going to do one.
Go ahead. I'm not being disruptive. Go ahead.
Let her talk.
Go ahead.
A New Yorker coming to New England and telling them how they feel. I mean, that's
A New Yorker coming to New England and citing polling data that's available for everyone to read. Like, because I'm not from the state, I'm not capable of reading a poll. Your theory is that what? The polls are fake? That's what Donald Trump says when he gets a bad poll. I thought the libs hate Donald Trump. I thought lefties hate Donald Trump. That's what he says. It's a fake poll. It's a rigged poll. That's what she's doing here. She's giving the fake poll argument. Just absolute nonsense. And there are some people in there who are yucking it up with her because she's got her pals in there. But there were well over 100 people in there. And as Russell just said, that girl in the hat, she was feeling what I was saying. There were a lot of people who I could say, because, the camera sees this much. I see this much. Most of the people understood that I was just telling the truth and that this was just delusional spin and bullshit. And look, I don't blame her for telling people to go vote. Like, I wasn't expecting her to say, yeah, you're right, we should give up, don't vote for me. But the whole thing, you're not from here, so you're unaware of what the real numbers are, what the real polling is.
Well, we have a saying in Texas, all hat, no cattle.
yeah, exactly. It's almost done.
I mean, she's from Texas. I'm surprised she never falls back on that.
One of the things I've learned about granite staters is that they keep things very close to their chest. The other thing that I learned about granite staters is how many people in the last few days haven't decided who they're voting for. But I have a good feeling they're not going to necessarily explain it to you.
Well, they didn't have to explain it to me. They've explained it to pollsters dozens of times. And the data that I was citing turned out to be pretty accurate. Pretty accurate. Because as it stands right now, Biden 72.5, Marianne 4.4. So there you have it. There you have it. Okay? Disruptive New Yorker proven correct.
Okay, and not to rub it in, but everyone should really go back and find, I don't know if that was the very first cringy John and Yoko in bed video they did, but the one where they were talking about how the Washington Post was talking about how there's a potential revolt amongst the New Hampshire Democrats. Yeah. And Kyle's there saying, this just got real interesting real fast. And she's saying, I never thought this early that the Washington Post would be saying that. What a bunch of fucking degenerate, lying, grifter fucking pricks. What a couple of fucking pieces of shit to sit there with their viewers and try to get them to put their money and their time into this nonsense.
Exactly. It was just nonsense. And that's what I was trying to communicate to the room. I didn't put it in a hostile way because I knew it wouldn't go over. What's that?
Nick was a nihilist, right?
Right.
Crystal basically, she did that video after the Marianne interview with RBN where she never named them, but it was clearly directed at them.
Right.
How nihilistic it is not to get behind it. You're supporting a fucking a new age guru with a 30-year reputation of viciously abusing her staff. That's your idea of not nihilism?
Yeah, inside a Democratic Party who now the electorate has proven you could do everything but literally spit in their face and they will come out and vote for you.
Joe Biden could drive through New Hampshire and throw his adult diapers out the window.
Yeah.
And they'd still line up and vote for him.
They'd still lined up and voted for him. Look at that. Look at that. Even Dean Phillips hardly had a showing. I mean,
Right.
20%,
They tried to gin that
too.
shit up on Breaking Points too. Oh, there's a late surge for
bullshit. You can't get within 50 points of the guy even when he is not competing. It was beyond the joke from the onset, obviously.
Because these are the most fucking mindless people in America.
Of course.
All you need to know to know what you're dealing with the Democrats, they are the only people left in the country whose view of the corporate media has not eroded over the decades. They're the only ones that still have an overwhelming belief that the media is doing a good job and that the news they get is truthful and honest. They're the only morons who still believe that. It's like 70%.
Yep.
That's what Joe Biden got. That's the 70%. The 70% of Democrats who trust
that's why I say that all the time, too. You've heard me say that over and over again. It's 70% of the electorate. It's unmovable, unshakable. All right? There's nothing you can do about it. It's not Marianne's fault that she plays so poorly. I'm not saying she ran a great campaign. I'm not saying I agree with everything she says. I certainly don't. We've aired those disagreements out several times on the show. But it's not her fault. I even said that. I said I don't mean any disrespect by saying you're in single digits, because that's not a function of the campaign you ran. It's a function of the party in which you ran it.
Right.
I wasn't trying to insult
it's also
her.
a function of the media that covers the campaigns.
Right.
It's on the one hand, she's not a serious candidate, but neither is Joe Biden. So on that level, I can't really say, well, of course they're not covering her. She's not serious. And she's not serious. But the guy who can't get through a sentence without sounding like he's on the nod and needs another fix to finish the speech, that's the serious candidate.
Exactly. All right, we'll take some super chats, folks, and then we'll get to some more segments. Hobbs45, thanks for the $11. It's ironic that Alec Baldwin will probably go to prison before Donald Trump. Maybe someday they will be cellmates. Good one, Hobbs. Pat Donahue, I'm at the stage where the sight of AOC angers me. The libs, like her, are a barrier to progress just as much as the Republicans.
Yep.
And at least they're out to do you over in favor of the elites. Thank you, Patrick, and good point. DC, thanks for the $5. Ain't got much, but heck of a job in New Hampshire, Keatster. Thank you, Patrick. I take it you both have canceled and sworn fealty to the people's candidate, Lord Vermin Supreme. Yeah, how's Vermin Supreme doing? He's got a few dozen votes. Yo, Vermin Supreme should be doing a lot better. That's fucked up.
So should Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, so should Dave Chappelle. But I would have voted for Vermin Supreme. In fact, I might vote for Vermin Supreme.
Maybe we will.
Yeah, I liked him.
Maybe we will.
He seemed like a straight shooter.
Beats writing in Paul Atreides again.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Christos Sarakaigas. Congrats, Keaton. I wish for you to be a good dad and be there for them always. Thank you, my friend. Well, I have some practice. This will be my third. Love and good health to you and Russell and all that you love. Thank you very much. And it is a boy, by the way. We do know that. It is a boy. It's a baby boy.
Oh.
Yeah.
You didn't even tell me that.
Oh, that's right. I didn't tell you that. I forgot. We could do the sex test now because, see, when you have twins, you can't do the genetic test to find out sex because there's two of them in there. So I think you can find out if it's two girls or not. Is that how it works? But you can't find out two boys or one or the other. I forget what it was. But we had to wait a long time to find out the sex of the two guys that we got now. But, yeah, this one is a third boy. Big sausage fest over at the Weiss household for the most part.
Were you hoping for a girl?
Kind of, but I mean, it'll be great having a boy. I mean, the thing is, a boy will be a third best bud for me. And the thing is, we already have two boys, so like, as much as it would have been great to have a girl,
have the clothes.
We already have the clothes. We already have the toys that they will probably like, not to be gender normative or whatever the fuck that the lingo is. But we already have trucks and dinosaurs. We don't have to get Barbie dolls and shit like that. Not to. I don't mean anything by that. Don't come for me. I don't know what the deal is now. I don't know what you're supposed to say now. I don't mean any disrespect to the tomboys or whatever you call them nowadays. I don't know.
The kid's talented. The kid's talented. You don't have to.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just leave it at that.
Just leave it at that. But it will be easier. Let's see Trump flip New Hampshire in the general election. Could happen. Although, one thing, Cool Blue, And I don't know if Cool Blue, you weren't in the chat last night, but I don't know if you had a chance to go back and watch my New Hampshire presentation. The stream is up from yesterday. A lot of the Republicans in New Hampshire do seem to be these like normie moderate Republicans. I know New Hampshire has this reputation for being very ornery and libertarian. Doesn't seem that way. Didn't seem that way on the ground, and doesn't seem that way in the numbers either. I mean, Haley's going to lose tonight, but she's not doing terribly. Like, she's not getting totally annihilated.
But remember, like you said, a lot of Democrats crossed over for that.
That's true. That's true. The Democrats who had enough self-respect not to write in Joe Biden crossed over and voted for Haley.
Yeah, like why? Okay, because that I don't get either. Because the type of Democrat that would do that would also be the type of Democrat that would find Nikki Haley acceptable and
who
would
want
feel
to
that it's
Trump.
Existential to make sure that Trump is not the president again. So why wouldn't all those people have just voted for Nikki Haley?
No, it's a great point.
Because they're fucking stupid.
Right, because they're dumb. They're just fucking dumb. Because that's a great point. Like, the kind of Democrat who's going to cross over and vote for Nikki Haley, the time to do that is right now if you really want to weaken Donald Trump. Well, you got to vote for Joe Biden for in a meaningless primary.
What for?
Right.
What for?
Exactly.
To show what good Democrats they are.
Right, to show that they will do anything.
Me and Keaton talked about this. I'm like Facebook friends with a very famous playwright. And he
Who's
literally
an excellent playwright too, a genius playwright, brilliant playwright.
Yeah, like perhaps the best playwright of my generation. And he told me he's so much got the lib mind virus in spite of his prodigious talent. He told me Joe Biden saved the country.
Yeah.
It's really sad. It's really sad. It's like hearing that from like Tennessee Williams.
Yeah, right.
Right? You would just be like, really?
Really, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like your plays have this rich insight into human nature and this. Really? You're this dumb? Like you're this fundamentally stupid off the page? How does that happen?
Yeah. Yep. Pretty bizarre stuff. Riffsife, vote Godzilla, Chappelle for VP. Thank you, Riffsife. DC, unprocessed write-ins. I fucking told you so. There you go. Beautiful. DC, Fat Man TV. Thanks for the $5 super sticker. Virtuoso says libs for flogging. Yes, indeed. That's right. That's right. And ruthless criticism. Cenk 2024, baby. Here we go. Oh, wait. Yeah, it sucks that he wasn't campaigning in New Hampshire. That would have been
epic.
That would have been pretty damn cool.
You're a monster. You're a monster. Throw him out.
Throw him out. You're a monster. Samar D, did you see that Joe Biden had 13 disruptions today in Virginia? I saw you had a couple. Had a couple, but I didn't know it was that many. So we'll have to maybe cover that Thursday. Thank you for that. And Fat Man TV, thanks for the other $2 here. Alrighty, folks, we will get to some more super chats as the night progresses. We do have some Rumble rants coming in as well. By the way, shout out to Jake in the booth tonight. Round of applause for Jake in the chat for being here, fielding Rumble rants. So you can send those if you got those. So Joe Biden, the dominance winner in tonight's New Hampshire primary, which puts the Democratic primary to bed, right? I mean, at this point, I don't think there's any narrative that anybody can spin that there's going to be anything beyond this evening. Joe Biden winning 70+% of the vote despite not participating, boycotting, and disenfranchising the voters. But Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on the, I don't know what this is, the Big Brother, Big Sister podcast. She looks like the Big Brother from 1984. It's a hell of a layout that they have.
I didn't know there was a live action version of the Three Little Pigs.
You're right. Here's AOC getting the question. What is it? Hit it or what the fuck?
Had it or hit it, Joe Biden.
Had it or hit it. Joe Biden, smash or nah? AOC, go ahead.
Had it
Mash
or
or
hit
nap?
it, Joe
Nap?
Biden.
Hit it. You know, honestly,
Hit it.
here's the thing. I think sometimes people want electoral politics to be, we overly identify with, it's like if you vote for someone, they have to be the embodiment of you. And that's actually something that I think Donald Trump provided to a lot of people, where it's like, if you voted for him and if you were a Donald Trump person, like you want, like it symbolized so much. But I think what we have here in this situation is a more just honest thing. There are plenty of things that the president does that I completely disagree.
Okay, so far what you're saying is it's good that he sucks. It's good that we don't identify too much with him. It's a good thing. That makes us realistic. Right?
You know, there's a lot of speculation about what happened to the two little girls from The Shining, and this is providing an answer.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Although they were brunettes, but I guess you could dye your hair.
Agree with. I think, you know, right now what's happening in Gaza, I can't go on every single day seeing this. I don't associate myself with what's happening. But at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that we just can't allow this fascist movement to grow in this country. And
what's happening in Gaza? What's happening in Gaza is a mass murder, is a Holocaust of sorts.
She doesn't identify with that. It's like a brand label she won't wear.
Yeah, she doesn't associate with that. That's like American sunscreen, right? But Donald Trump's fascist movement has to be stopped. Joe Biden's on TV hugging a guy committing a mass murder, committing a Holocaust right in front of our eyes. Now, you don't associate with that, but Donald Trump has to be stopped.
And what I think is actually...
She doesn't endorse that view.
She doesn't endorse that view. What is it? I am not enrolled in your analysis.
She's not enrolled in that.
She's not enrolled in my analysis.
Marianne's other favorite is she doesn't subscribe to this idea.
I don't subscribe to your idea.
We just can't allow this fascist movement to grow in this country. And what I think is actually hopeful about our politics is that we can exist outside.
I'm sorry, bitch. Aren't you the one that tweeted out the day after Mehdi Hassan smeared Matt Taibbi that you wanted Congress to investigate him for perjury? And you want to come up here and talk about fascism? Shut the fuck up.
Side of electoral politics.
Hold on, I want to see this point though, because this is kind of important.
Fascist movement to grow in this country. And what I think is actually hopeful about our politics is that we can exist outside of electoral politics in organizing our communities and standing with our friends. And, you know, if it's coming down to this next election, for me personally, the decision to vote is not a difficult one for me, because just because I'm voting for him doesn't mean that he embodies everything about me.
Right.
So that to me is where I'm at. But I think, you know, it's people are going to get mad on the internet because that's what they do. But I think we just got to be adults about the situation and realize that electoral politics is just one small sliver of how we make the world better.
So then why are you there? This is what I don't get. Whenever she gets into a situation where she can't reconcile her principles with her function, she very often reverts back to, well, electoral politics isn't the end-all, be-all. You need a strong outside game, a strong sort of activist movement. So why not quit and do that? You're in Congress, and your default when you get into a pickle like this is to just trash the institution of which you are a part.
Right.
Why not just quit and become
which would
why
be
not
fine.
quit and be an activist then, if this is how you feel? It just doesn't make any sense. She gets herself into these situations where she's forced to explain how her position is actually not that important, and so voting is just this very small part of your overall activism. But it's not a small part in the sense that when you tell activists and outside movement builders that they must, at the end of the day, funnel their support, funnel their activism into the Democratic Party and vote for a guy who is enabling the most horrific human mass murder in a generation, you're taking power away from those activists when you instruct them to do that and insist that they do that. You take all that power away from them. So this is it's just absolute nonsense. I mean, when you think through what she's saying, none of it adds up. You're saying, well, I don't agree with what Biden does, and you have to understand voting is only a small part of what you do, so you really have to focus on the outside movements. But if you're directing these outside movements to cave and vote for Joe Biden, then you're taking all their power away from them.
Right. Well, not only that, it would be fine if she were attacking the institution that she's a part of, if she were going her own way when it comes time to vote. If she were creating that so-called good trouble that they claim to be making, then yeah, I mean, that's how she started out, right? Trash talking Congress and pissing off Pelosi. And that's when we all supported her. As I know we have a lot of new people, I was out there, man, when she was a bartender. I was out volunteering in Astoria when she was running against Crowley. So I certainly didn't start out rejecting her. I was a supporter. I was a volunteer. But AOC, other members of the squad, people like Jayapal caving into the infrastructure deal, that's how we got here. That's how we got here. They were the last hope. Like, they were really the last, Jimmy, very early, as soon as Sanders endorsed Hillary Clinton, Jimmy, as is often the case, he was ahead of the curve, turned on him, said, hey, he's trying to sheepdog everyone back into this party. And I remember at the time I processed it and I said, I can't say he's wrong, but I have to try. I have to try. I have to try the Goldwater approach. The post Goldwater, you build the bench from the bottom up, you get these people elected, and you build your revolution that way. I had to leave it all on the field before I could walk away. And AOC and the squad, I think for a lot of people, represented that. It was, we gave Bernie the benefit of the doubt in his arguments that we have to take over the party from within. And we tried. And we sent these people in, and they were all very quickly neutralized, whether that's who they were already or they got there and they saw, okay, if you go through this door, you get to be rich, you get to be famous, you don't get a lot of pushback from the establishment.
Or the press.
And you can just kind of, and I'm sure most of them justify it to themselves by saying, well, better me in this position than someone else. At least I really care and I'm trying, and the institution is so corrupt. Nobody could do much better than I'm doing. I'm sure very few of them just say, all right, fuck it, I'm taking the money. They rationalize it to themselves. But I know some people feel like AOC was an op from the beginning. Watching her over the course of her career in Congress, you could see how they gradually broke her down and made sure that she got her mind right. And we covered it at the time. The moment that they broke her was the Iron Dome vote. That was the moment. That was the moment she gave up any last bit of resistance to Pelosi and company that she had in her. And hey, one compromise leads to another compromise, and before you know it, you're Pelosi 2.0. And that's what she is at this point. And that's why so many people who once supported her, supported Bernie, have just completely walked away from the party. Look at what she's saying. It's fucking nonsense. It's nonsense. Where are these outside movements you're supporting then, if you believe in that?
Right.
I don't see it. Where are you? You're not showing up to these union events. You're not supporting labor. What are you doing?
Yeah, and the other side of this also is that a lot of those movements that she started out supporting have been co-opted themselves. DSA,
right.
Sunrise Movement, those are the two that jump out right off the top of my head. I mean, the Sunrise Movement is just a joke of an organization at this point.
Right.
And when I phone banked for Bernie, I didn't phone bank the second time. I didn't phone bank through the campaign. I phone banked through Sunrise because I thought, okay, this will be something worthwhile to sort of survive an electoral defeat. So even if Bernie loses, if I kind of help them grow their numbers, that'll be a victory of sorts. No, you don't hear from them much unless it's at a big event where they're ultimately pledging their support to elected Democrats. As soon as Biden won the nomination, the Sunrise Movement started angling for positions, right? And, by positions, I don't mean secretary. I mean, they're kids, but, they're task forces and all that shit. It all just gets funneled in. So if you're going to talk about an outside game, you have an obligation to make sure that outside game does not get co-opted and does not get funneled into the same organization that is insisting we all have a moral obligation to vote for an enabler of the worst genocide of our lifetimes because Donald Trump represents a fascist movement. And look, I was in the streets of New Hampshire this weekend. I went to that Trump rally. And, I didn't think most of the people there were consciously fascist, but there is a mob mentality. There is a mob element there. It's not a great scene. Like, I'm not telling you there's nothing to worry about with Trump. I'm saying you put that next to Joe Biden and the hell that has been unleashed on this world under Joe Biden, you can't scare anybody into voting for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. It's not an endorsement of Donald Trump. But look at what you're trying to do. You're trying to draw a comparison between blue fascism and red fascism. That's how most sensible people see it. Go ahead.
I mean, at least with blue fascism, your kids can read about strap-ons at public school.
That's true. That's something.
Yeah, you have that advantage. No, she is just such a disappointment, and she's done so much damage. And this is why, and this is a bigger conversation. This is why a lot of people will say, and this was a problem they had in the 60s too. Too many of the people on the left are PMCs, and for PMCs, the temptations of being what there's probably the only time you're going to see me favorably cite David Brooke. They want to be Bobos. They want to be the Bobos in paradise, right? They want to live very tastefully. They want to go to the best restaurants. They want to wear fancy clothes. That's the whole PMC thing. They feel entitled to that, even if they're nominally left. In the end, that's where they're coming from. That's who they are. They're very easily co-opted. And you can go back and you can see the 60s radicals lamenting not having a working class movement within their movement. But because they were PMCs, they were never really able to talk to the union guys. They always read like what they were. Rich kids, college kids. They never were able to really get them to rally behind their causes. And it's the reason that they all wind up selling out. If you don't have a movement that's rooted in the working class, it's always going to end up like that. They're always going to be very easily bought off with shiny objects and social status.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said.
Look at the auto workers, right? Sean Fain is like fucking practically flying the hammer and sickle.
Right.
You're not seeing that from any PMCs.
Right. Exactly. We are going to do a segment on the UAW sometime this week as well. But Jake tells me we are at 666 YouTube likes and that people want an encore. Beautiful. Thank you, Jake, for letting us know that. Will S., thank you for the $5. Keaton is so lucky that Marianne doesn't have heat vision powers. Also, Biden voters are more
that she wasn't
brain
holding a
worm.
phone.
What's that?
Or that she wasn't holding a phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know how much her heat vision would have helped her, just given how cold it was. But Biden voters are more brainworm than his fly larva infested skull. Yeah, indeed. 100%. P. Walker, one thing Granite Staters don't hold close? The gap between the Biden and Williamson primary vote. Yes, indeed. I wonder how my tweet's doing. I tweeted out a follow-up on that. I'm expecting good numbers off of that. I'm expecting good numbers. That's going to be a big one. If you wrote the big guy...
You got to tag Elon.
That's true. I got to tag Elon in these. If you wrote the big guy, you'd think they would count that as a Biden vote. That's funny. That would be a good troll. Cablo K, thanks for the $4.99. The Somali community in Minnesota, second. Favorite JOO's great work in New Hampshire. And Russell, your Italiano is improving. Sadly, they have brutally colonized us. So
God damn it. God damn it. Are you telling me that Romans have colonized people?
Oh, that's too bad. But shout out to you. Thank you. Great to know. Got some listeners in the Somali community in Minnesota. Second, is that Ilhan Omar's
Very cool
district there? I'm not sure. Derek P, thanks for the $5. There's no more playing man-to-man, Keaton. You and the wife now got to play zone. Congrats. Yeah, exactly. Got to play a zone now. Good. Well put, my friend. Okay. Caladin Cat blessed. Congrats on the new baby boy, Keaton. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Grazie. David Brad 6'5". The great mass of the Democratic Party electorate is formed by a simple addition of homologous magnitudes, much as potatoes in a sack from a sack a sack of potatoes. Thank you very much. Minneapolis City Council. All right, so we got the Minnesota folks in the Rumble chat tonight. Wonderful. Proudly voted for ceasefire resolution today. Cool. The loudest opponents were a trans black woman and reps complaining about homelessness and potholes. Well, that we might have to put that on the agenda.
That's pretty interesting. That's right up our alley if it has as you're reporting.
Yeah, that could be a fun segment. Not a fun segment, but a good one for Thursday.
Well, just because we want to really wade into a contentious issue, I sent this over to you. So, where is this? Is this Oakland? Is this Chicago? Where the black community is suing the government because they're giving benefits to the immigrants that they've been asking for literally centuries.
Right. Well, speaking of immigrants, that's our third segment of the evening here. The Supreme Court allows Biden administration to remove razor wire on U.S.-Mexico border in 5-4 votes. This is from CNN. The Supreme Court is allowing U.S. Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire deployed by Texas GOP Governor Greg Abbott's security initiative at the U.S.-Mexico border while the state's legal challenge to the practice plays out. The vote was 5-4. The justice's order is a major victory for President Joe Biden in his ongoing dispute with Abbott over border policy, which had become especially fraught in recent days after 3 migrants drowned in a section of the Rio Grande that state officials have blocked agents' access to, prompting the administration to further press for the high court's intervention. A federal appeals court last month ordered the Border Patrol agents to stop removing razor wire along a small stretch of the Rio Grande while court proceedings continue, and the Justice Department asked the justices earlier this month to step in on an emergency basis to wipe away that order, which they did on Monday. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh said they would have denied the federal request. Steve Vladeck, CNN Supreme Court analyst and professor at the University of Texas School of Law, said that while the order is a victory for the Biden administration, the delay in issuing it raises future questions. Whatever one thinks of current immigration policy, it ought not to be that controversial that states cannot prevent the federal government from enforcing federal law, lest we set the stage for Democratic-led states to similarly attempt to frustrate the enforcement of federal policies by Republican presidents. That's an interesting point. That 4 justices would still have left the lower court injunction in place will be taken, rightly or wrongly, as a sign that some of those long-standing principles of constitutional federalism might be in a degree of flux. White House spokesman Angelo Hernandez told CNN on Monday that the White House was pleased the Supreme Court vacated the injunction that prevented frontline personnel from performing vital federal functions and interfered with their ability to address urgent humanitarian situations and enforce our law. Andrew Mahalaris, a spokesman for Abbott, said in a statement that the absence of razor wire and other deterrence strategies encourages migrants to make unsafe and illegal crossings between ports of entry. He added that the governor will continue fighting to defend Texas's property and its constitutional authority to secure the border. The state sued last year to stop Border Patrol agents from cutting the concertina wire, saying it illegally destroyed state property and undermined security in order to assist migrants in crossing the border. The Fifth Circuit is currently weighing the legal questions around whether the federal government has the authority to cut that wire that Texas had installed on the banks of the Rio Grande. It's set to hear oral arguments in the case February 7th. Texas has, of course, urged the Supreme Court to deny the Biden's request, telling the justices in court papers that there is no basis for this court's intervention, much less now. All right, so legally, it does seem to me that the federal government does have the right to set immigration policy and enforcement. Like, there doesn't seem to be much of a legal argument for why the federal government can't come in and do what it has to do, because it's not Texas's border with Oklahoma, it's Texas's border with Mexico. That's a federal issue. I'm no lawyer, but that seems to be a pretty sound legal argument. But this is one of those issues that I think will play to the Republicans' advantage, because it just plays to people's suspicions that the Democrats want a porous border. And this issue right now is as hot as it's ever been. You know, when I was out on the campaign trail in New Hampshire, invariably, every single Republican voter who I talked to, even the independents and the Democrats who were interested in Nikki Haley, two issues that they always mention: jobs, obviously, and the border, right? Border was huge. Now, this issue, this whole border policy set has always been a kind of like a second tier issue. Like, it's never been a minor issue, but it's never been as high on people's list of issues as it is now. Now, every person I talk to, border, right? Even more than inflation, jobs, right? Even more than that whole set, because especially at the Haley events, a lot of those people were more PMC, so those issues didn't matter as much to them.
Right.
I've never seen a voting group, and by voting group, I don't just mean a particular block. I mean the 2024 general population as concerned with border policy as they are now. And so that creates a high-stakes environment for rulings like this, especially heading into a campaign season where this issue is going to be front and center in the way that it really has never been before. Yeah, you had Donald Trump talk about, y'all want to build the wall, right? That was a nice slogan. It was a nice metaphor for his campaign. And it was on people's minds, like I said, as a B tier. This time, this is one or two on everybody's list.
Well, because it's total chaos now. And I keep saying this. We do not, and I don't hear many people, even the most ultra-conservative people, even people like Matt Walsh who comment on the border, even Greg Foreman who comments on the border at the Black Conservative channel. I don't see anybody saying, I blame these migrants.
Right.
These migrants are bad people. I don't see anyone in the conversation saying that, so that's a red herring. I will say right up front, have you ever known our government that is currently supporting a genocide, have you ever known our government to adopt policies regarding poor brown people that were primarily motivated by compassion and decency? Ever? Okay, so let's take off the table that these policies are compassionate policies. These policies are motivated by concern for migrants. They are clearly not. That would be unprecedented in the history of our government to be letting people pour over the border this way out of concern. So why are they doing it? I think the best and the idea that we can't stop it is absurd. It's absurd. We have the world's largest military by many orders of magnitude. If we want that border shut, it would be shut tomorrow. In fact, look at this. Now, I'm not saying I don't know all the logistics of it. I'm not saying razor wire is necessarily the way to go in terms of humanitarianism, in terms of injuries to migrants. But it seems to me that if you ran razor wire all along the border, that would be one pretty effective obstacle. And don't tell me if this country really wanted to keep immigrants out, we'd be above running razor wire along the border. So they want all of these immigrants coming in for some reason. That is the only explanation you can come up with. Now, the great replacement theory, I don't really subscribe to that, partly because okay, sure, people can be very naive about what people's cultural beliefs are. Latinos tend to be pretty culturally conservative. So the idea that they would just automatically be Democrats,
especially now.
Yeah, I don't really see that as the reason. I think it is right at a moment when labor has been getting momentum and leverage that it hasn't seen in decades. I don't think it's a coincidence that you have migrants pouring over the border. And they're going to use people like AOC, who went out and made a speech in New York that she got heckled for. We need to very quickly create working permits for these people. That's the game. That's the game. You make it a compassion issue to give permission to migrants to start working, to cause chaos in the labor market, to depress the leverage of labor. That is why I think not only that this is happening now, that's why this issue is dragged out for so long. The corporations love having so many desperate people coming over the border because it does affect the labor market.
Well, they like it when our workers are poor and desperate. Like the more poor people there are in any given area with limited resources, the more leverage that the rich people have and that the corporations have. I mean, that's just basic kind of zero-sum math. And so when it comes to this particular case, I mean, I have a feeling the court's going to rule with Biden.
Probably.
If Amy Coney Barrett ruled to honor the temporary pause, it probably means they will say that, yes, the government does have the right to impose their will in these situations. And as that guy mentioned, I think it was the legal analyst or something, as he mentioned, if you set a precedent that states have the right to basically make their own border enforcement policies, well, then you're going to have situations where, in red states, it'll be, you take the northern border, right? North Dakota, you'll have the barbed wire. Minnesota, you won't. Just be this patchwork set of things. If it's a national issue, if it's a national border, I think the federal government does actually have the right to set that policy, which then leaves that issue open to litigation in national races. And that's where it becomes, I think, a more effective weapon for the Republicans than the Democrats, because the optics of it do make it look like the Democrats want an open border. Now, I'm not saying a barbed wire fence or a chain wire fence is the right way to go, because it can create those humanitarian situations where if somebody needs to get to somebody on the other side and they can't, and they drown or something, right? So I'm not saying that's a good idea.
Which happened.
Right, of course, right. Yeah. And obviously that's awful. So I'm not saying it's a good idea. Like, I personally probably don't support that. In fact, I certainly don't support that. But the government has the right, the federal government does have the right to set immigration enforcement policies. And I think that's the right precedent to set. Now, that can very easily be weaponized against the Democrats, especially in a climate like this, where, once again, just to say a second time before we wrap this segment, I've never seen people as concerned with immigration as this cycle. Every person I don't think there was a single person I talked to, whether they were Democrat, independent, anybody else, who didn't list the border as a top policy. Maybe a couple of those Nikki Haley sickos who were like, I like her foreign affairs experience. Like, maybe a couple of those. But everybody else, it was all border, jobs, inflation. That was it. That's the whole ball game. And that's what the polling says, too. Those are the top two issues by far. Nothing else even comes close.
All right. So one final point on this, because in that article, you didn't use that part. I think it closed out by saying it's unclear. They basically indicated it's unclear what Texas will do in response, meaning will they follow the court order or not? And I just want to point out, in a country where the tension between states' rights and the authority of the federal government has been the central tension, arguably the central tension in our politics from the beginning. When you have a federal government whose credibility has collapsed to this degree, I would honestly be surprised if it keeps going in this direction. If you don't have states turn around and just say, go fuck yourself. Bring the troops in. Go ahead. So this would not be the first empire in its twilight to have renegade provinces go their own way.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's an interesting thought, because it certainly could happen. $1 Million Trooper, thanks for the $1. Just got my retired veteran license plate, and you'll be pleased to know it ends in 669, a.k.a. the position of the beast. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. What do we got here? Let's take some more super chats over here. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. Advice for parents whose children are all the same sex: get a cat or dog who is the opposite sex. That's what we do. Our dog is a girl. We do have a girl dog, indeed, and that is good advice, Cool Blue. Ben Mank, I don't know why some YouTubers liked Marianne. She never felt inspiring and always had a condescending tone. Indeed. Well some YouTubers needed a candidate.
A lot of people are uninspiring and have a condescending tone.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like what AOC was talking about. They saw themselves in her.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one theory. One theory for sure. Donald, grabbing by the pussy Trump, thanks for the $2. God bless YouTube. Been following since 11K subs. Yeah, we remember you, my friend. We know you.
Yeah, you have a very memorable name.
OG, yes, indeed. Memorable name for sure. Her name is pronounced A.O. Hypocrisy. Thank you, Riffside. Appreciate that. Okay, I think we are almost caught up here. Chow Kathy Garland Nixon has the ticket on the border, recruiting for the military in preparation to have a military that would have no problem turning on the population when they rise up. Interesting. Okay. Let's go to segment number 4. All right, folks, this is a quick one. This is a Face the Nation panel about voters heading in to 2024 in the pivotal state of Michigan, which seems to be slipping away from Joe Biden, largely due to his handling of the Israel-Gaza war. So first, let's hear from a man who says that he's not typically a single-issue voter, but in this case, he has to make an exception.
You did change your mind.
Yes.
On the president. Why?
I was a champion for Joe Biden until October 7th. I feel he's disowned us, disenfranchised us with his stance on Gaza.
What do you mean by that?
He's not listening to us.
What the fuck you think he means
We are
by
asking for a ceasefire at this time.
What do you mean?
It's a human.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, that's fair.
That's fair, but I mean,
to
it's an
draw him
obvious
out as an. She knows what he means.
I guess, yeah. I guess you have to get. You have to get some content.
You're being a little hard on her, Keaton. Yeah,
right.
Like with Marianne.
like with Marianne. Maybe I'm too tightly wound from that Marianne. Maybe I'm still wound too tight from that.
I think you just don't like powerful women.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. All right, let's hear.
At this time, it's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Too many lives are being lost at this time. I was never a single-issue voter. In fact, I used to argue with people not to be single-issue voters, but for me, this is a deal breaker. Mm-hmm. Way too many lives have been lost.
When you say us, you're Muslim. Is that what
Yes.
you mean?
Mm-hmm.
You think the Muslim community here feels as you do?
Yes, I think a vast majority of Muslims, Arab Americans, even progressives who I identify myself as a progressive, and many people that I talk to in my circles are not going to be voting for Joe Biden.
And that's consistent with what we've heard.
Yep.
Not only
Yep.
is there a lack of enthusiasm, but there's actually an active boycott campaign going on, not just in Michigan, but across multiple swing states where Arab and Muslim voters are organizing a boycott campaign, either to vote in down ballot races, but intentionally leaving the presidential item empty, or just not voting at all and encouraging people to basically sabotage Joe Biden in November. So that's consistent with a lot of what we've heard.
What's going to be very interesting if this all plays out the way that early indications would suggest. The only people Biden is going to have left are going to be the rich liberal white people. And watching them try to cope with Biden losing largely because he lost people of color, and them trying not to denigrate those groups as they're going to want to do. They're going to want, because that's their default. Right. Don't you realize
what you've done?
What you've done? Don't you realize how much better the Democrats are for you? Don't you? They're going to want to go that way, but it's going to be so fraught for these people who have been singing the praises of Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo and anti-racism. How do they go and blame people of color for knowing themselves and what they want and their own choices and having agency? That is going to be cognitive dissonance to a level that could power Seattle for a year. If you put all the smoking heads of the libs together, you'd have a power source.
Yeah, no, indeed. Indeed. And speaking of single issue voters, the one single issue that the Democrats are hoping will save them in 2024 is the same single issue that saved them in 2022, which is the issue of reproductive rights in the aftermath of the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And so I want to play this piece. This is about 2 minutes. We hear two women talk about how they will likely vote blue because of this issue. And then you hear a very interesting answer from a third interview subject.
Republican candidates have different visions on what you just laid out there. You are shaking your head vehemently, so I have to. No, you feel strongly. Please tell me how much of reproductive rights are a factor in your presidential campaign vote?
Oh, it's huge. The president chooses our Supreme Court justices. I wish I had confidence that you say in our Supreme Court justices. I think there's probably it's one of the most important things that the president does, and that we have had justices put in under President Trump that are, really changing precedent in major ways that I find very disconcerting, and I'm very concerned about reproductive freedom in this country.
And you are as well.
Same. I mean, I think it was, looking bigger picture, just the last few Supreme Court nominees, the process was totally upended and totally disregarded. And I think it starts with that, and then freedoms were rolled back, such as reproductive freedoms. So I'm fortunate that we have protected them in the state of Michigan. I think, just again, the American people are for some type of abortion protection. Certainly there's a sliding scale, but for the federal government to just disregard that and go the other way, I think is appalling.
Saba, you said reproductive rights are a huge factor for you, but that you probably won't vote for President Biden.
I think it would be hypocritical of me to use reproductive rights as a way to justify voting for Biden when Biden is aiding and sending military aid to Israel, which is airstriking Gaza and blocking humanitarian aid, leading to women there who are pregnant, either getting C-sections without anesthesia, not being able to be provided with prenatal care.
Wow. That, in the parlance of our times, is what we might call based. That is a based young woman. That is an amazing answer to give, especially on a pretty mainstream milquetoast show like a Sunday morning Face the Nation panel. Say, yeah, no, I'm all for reproductive freedom, but it would be hypocritical for me to go and pull the lever for Joe Biden to secure, which you're really not securing, but to at least in theory try and secure my own reproductive freedom when Joe Biden is helping to impose these just unthinkable conditions on women and moms in Gaza right now who are needing now C-sections without anesthesia. That's an incredible answer. It's an incredible answer, and that really exposes a lot of the Western chauvinism out of a lot of the sort of American social democrat movements. One of the things I may have brought up at the Dean Phillips event, if I were allowed to have a conversation, is, you know, he's for Medicare for all. He's got a lot of these young kids
thrown
there.
Out.
Yeah, if I hadn't gotten thrown out. He says he's for Medicare for all now that he needs votes, or he doesn't need them anymore. Now it's over and done with. But in an attempt to rally young voters to his side, he started advocating for Medicare for all for the first time in his life. And one thing that I always think about, you know, is like, so we're going to advocate for free health care for us when our government has helped Israel bomb 169 healthcare centers in Gaza. Isn't that kind of selfish and entitled of us to act as if we are deserving of free healthcare as we help inflict this horror on healthcare workers and patients and moms and babies over there? Now, you know, I'm 37. It took me until now to have that light bulb moment. This girl's got to be early, mid-20s, looks like. That's an amazing answer.
Yeah, well, I feel when you see a lot of what's happening with like Muslims not only refusing to vote for Joe Biden, but actively organizing against him, this brought people where a lot of us got in 2020, arguing, listen, if you never refuse to vote for them, what leverage do you have going forward? There has to come an election where you just say, fuck you, I'm not voting for you, or you're never going to be able to get any policy from them. Why would they? Their donors speak a lot louder than you do as long as you keep voting for them. If they can take your votes for granted, what do they care what you think? They'll always favor their donors. It seems like Gaza made a lot of people catch up to that point of view.
Yeah. There's absolutely a sort of utilitarian logic to you know, drawing a red line.
Right.
There's
also,
also
it's not that Trump's going to be better on that issue. He's not.
No. But there's an element of usefulness there, but there's also just the usefulness of defining your politics in very basic terms. Like, you have to have a red line. Right. In order to, like, if you're a serious political person, you have to be able to say, okay, there is a line past which I cannot and will not vote for you under any circumstances whatsoever. And if this is not your red line, what possibly could be? What possibly could be your red line, if not this? There's just no point in participating in any political action or even discourse if you don't have certain principles that you just will not betray under any circumstances. And so for her to have the sense to say, well, of course I'm for reproductive rights for me, but I can't fight for myself unless I'm sticking up for somebody else.
Right.
And I'm not going to sell out the people in Gaza so that I can keep my local Planned Parenthood open. Like, I'm just not willing to go there. And there have to be some issues where you're just not willing to go there, or else you will be suckered into voting for people like Joe Biden your whole life. You'll be suckered into co-opted movements your whole life, right? You have to have a point at which you just say no. It's as simple as that.
Right. And because people have refused to do that, the Democrats today are far, not just to the right of Richard Nixon, the arch conservative of his day, far to the right of Richard Nixon.
Exactly.
Nixon, in many ways, was to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, in some
Sanders
respects.
never talked about creating a new government department. He created the EPA. Nixon was looking at UBI. Nixon proposed a universal health care scheme that was more generous than Obamacare, which I'll admit is a low bar, but who are the Democrats now? Way to the right. Nixon, if he ran today, he'd have to run as a Democrat. He would be way to the left of where Republicans are.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, and that is a function of Democrats being suckered time and again into just folding.
Right.
Right. And look at
where
they are now
incentives
relative
all
to their
to keep
base.
going to the right, because that's where the money is.
Exactly.
As long as you don't counterbalance that by with your vote, what's to stop that drift?
Right. And also look at where that has left the Democrats relative to their base, as opposed to where that has left the Republican politicians relative to their base. Who wears the pants in the relationship on the Republican Party? It's the base. So much to the point where they even got them to stop funding Ukraine.
Right.
I mean, whoever thought that was possible? But they did it. Imagine the Democratic base exerting that kind of leverage over Democratic leaders. That's laughable. It's comical. They just wrote in Joe Biden 70%, even though he told them their votes weren't going to count and he refused to campaign.
Hey, man, now this is the truth. I wrote this article a few years ago as kind of a thought experiment. If I were going to delve back into the two-party two-step, I would go to the Republicans, because I see their base as more feasible to persuade and to work with than the Democratic base.
Right.
The people who wrote in Biden, 70%, you can't do anything with those people. People who went ahead and voted for Donald Trump in spite of before they decided, hey, well, this is the way the tide is turning, we're going to have to get on board. Fox News was very anti-Trump. Right. And we were all led to believe that all these conservatives have a relationship to Fox akin to the relationship Democrats have to MSNBC. No, they don't. No, they don't, because they're very different people of a very different character. They are much more independent and much more willing to tell their leaders to go fuck themselves. If you want to take on the establishment, that's who you need. You can't work with people who would write in Joe Biden in a state he's not running in. What are you going to do with them? And again, I'm not going back into the two-party electoral politics game. But if I had to, I would try to reform the Republicans before I would try to work with the Democrats.
All right, beautiful. So, folks, like I said, we do have our Q&A over on Rumble after the show tonight. We do have one more segment that we're going to do over here on the YouTube side. But before we do that, we do want to shout out our Patreon members. You can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and help support this show. We thank everybody who has signed up. You get, in exchange for your support, your name on the show credits here. You also get call-in access to our post-show Rumble Q&As. Those post-show Q&As are viewable by everyone, so they are not supporter exclusive from a viewer standpoint. You can submit questions in the chat if you're not a paid member, but you do get to call and talk to us if you are a paid member at Patreon, Substack at dudissidents.substack.com, or on Locals, dudissidents.locals.com. So our paid members are the backbone of the show. They are what have allowed us to do this pretty much full time at this point. We are going to be adding our 4th weekly stream as soon as Russell's first stint at the Jimmy Dore Show ends on February 9th. So you guys made that possible. And you also get access to 2 supporter exclusive live streams per month. One of those is happening tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We do one early show, one matinee show, and one evening show, so that no matter your time zone, you can catch at least one of those a month live as they happen.
If you're not a patron, sign up before tomorrow.
Exactly.
So you can catch the patron show. This is the one where Keith's going to stick his dick in the mashed potatoes.
Right. I don't even think we can do that on Rumble. I think there are rules against that.
But we promised the patrons.
Even on Rumble. Patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or DoDissidents.locals.com. If you're watching on Rumble, and we got a big Rumble crowd tonight, according to Jake, 1,466 of you Rumblers as of the last check-in, you can hit that join button and join our Rumble account. Join our Locals. Perks are the same across all those levels. Our paid members are the backbone of the program, and we thank you very much. Joe Clavara, thanks for the $5. New Hampshire overwhelmingly prefers a walking drag rattle over everyone else. They should be absorbed by Canada. They don't actually share much of a border with Canada, right? I think it's Vermont that shares most of the border.
Yeah.
New Hampshire's got a little tip with Canada. It's easy to reverse those. What's the town that votes first? Dixville Notch. They voted last night. They're way up north, near the Canadian border. I would have liked to have gone to Dixville Notch. That would have been
like
a cool
27 people there or something?
Yeah, like 6 people voted. It's nothing. I would have liked to have gone there. That would have been a cool part of the coverage, but it's like 3 hours. It's a 6-hour round trip, so like I couldn't. But that's a interesting landscape up there for sure. Tony B, thanks for the $10. It's great when I stumble upon the show instead of non-live. Peace out. Thank you, Tony B. Appreciate that very much. 72 Marsh Flower 15. Per your point about immigrant aid compared to reparations, maybe if American blacks leave the U.S. and reapply as immigrants, they'd get more benefits. Yeah, well, that's what Marcel Dixon, a reparations activist, has made. Not exactly that point in as many words, but he's very what we would consider, I guess, in the parlance of our time, right wing on immigration for pretty much exactly the reason that you just mentioned there.
That's why they're suing. I want to cover that story. I think that's a really interesting story.
Indeed. We certainly should. Fret Pound, thanks for the $4.99. Just saw the thumbnail split screen of TYT and Trump. Is Miranda Sings a TYT member now? What was the split screen we had on today? We had Cenk, Ben Gleib. I forget what else we had on there. Forget who else is on there. But thank you. Fret Pound, thanks to the $4.99. Wasn't planning on super chatting. So good on you for sure. For sucking that, shirking that money out of my ass. Okay, thank you. I see what you did there. Beat the censors there. Cute. Clever. Kevin Hudson, thanks for the $5. JM, thanks for the thumbs up and the donation. Appreciate that, my friend. Brandon McNamara, reproductive rights, meaning the right not to reproduce, to suppress poor and black births, even when birth rates are falling in this country. Well, I mean, that's certainly, I've heard Marcel Dixon has made that argument as well. But, I am for reproductive rights, all suspicions notwithstanding. Sure, Phillips is for Medicare for all. Now that it has been privatized to hell, all 20 or so Dem candidates in 2020 were for Medicare for all until they weren't. Yeah, I mean, once I got into it with him, I don't know where that came from. But because his next question was, I don't know what his next question was, but I just said, by the way, I was for Medicare for all before you were. Just because I don't know where that came from, but I was just upset.
We call that the Pelosi.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You did the Pelosi.
I have a basement full of signs and also shrunken heads from my expedition to the south.
Right. Blank State over on Rumble. I'm going to scroll one of these because there's two parts here, and because there's scrolls, I want to keep it moving. Plus, be nice. You can make your point, but try and be nice. Tusker's delusional assertion that anarchism is right wing is absurd, dumb as hell, and 100% false. No state uplifts the workers. Did Stalin live less lavishly than the proletarians, and he and Lenin exploited to gain power? What is power if not the uneven assertion, coercion of force to benefit oneself personally? Hierarchy be damned. Penny Arcos, thanks for the $1. Where are the Bible-beating pro-life marchers when babies are being bombed in Gaza? Good question. There was the March for Life, but I don't think they were advocating for Gaza there. It just happened, though. It happens like in the winter. It happens in mid-January. Okay. Christian Fierro, these are 300 Uruguayan dollars. Thanks to Jake for catching that and converting it. So it's the Uruguayan peso. So thank you. for those pesos, my friend, and thanks, Jake, for catching that. So did you see Society of the Snow? We got 2 nominations. I know you got Wars and Oh No, but Trump to cover. Oscars, hee. Did you end up seeing Society of the Snow yet?
I have not.
Yeah, me neither. My next thing to watch is now Killers of the Flower Moon.
I heard something about it.
Yeah. I want to watch Killers of the Flower Moon now that it's free on Apple TV. Now I don't have to pay to watch it, so now I'll watch it. Okay, we got some more Rumble rants and some more Super Chats, but we got one more segment to do, and then we will be going over to Rumble for our post-show Q&A. Folks, here's the big headline. This was a throwdown. This was good old-fashioned TV on the Young Turks between Cenk Uygur and Ben Gleib. This was a discussion turned into just an absolute melee about Benjamin Netanyahu's statement that he would not seek to establish, big surprise, a Palestinian state in the aftermath of this Israel-Gaza war. We're going to cut in on Ben Gleib taking issue with the charge of ethnic cleansing against the Israelis.
Ethnic cleansing, because if you've ever been to Israel, have you been to Israel?
Why would I go to a barbarous country that imprisons 5 million Palestinians and never lets them go and brutalizes them, murders them at every turn? Why would I go to that country? Are you insane? No one go to Israel. You should never go to Israel until they end the occupation, and then we love them and we go back.
It's an incredible.
I'm sorry, I do love that answer. I like, no, are you crazy? Why would I go to such a horrible, evil country? Because that's exactly my answer. People ask me. This is always my answer. It was always my answer. Because people would ask me, especially as a young kid, because I was eligible for the birthright trip. Are you going to go to Israel? Of course not. Of course. Why? Of course I'm not going to go. What are you, out of your mind? That's like my exact answer. I have to hand it to Cenk Uygur there for saying that, because that's my exact answer when everybody would ask me about it.
But in the end, it's funny because he's taking this very strong position, but he will not cross the Rubicon. From what I can see, he will not go so far as to say Palestinians have the right of return. And once you grant the right of return, the premise of a Jewish state is moot. Israel cannot be a democratic state and a Jewish state, as John Kerry said. It cannot be both of those things. He doesn't want to get into that.
Because that's too outside the mainstream. I agree with that.
He says, the Israeli people, I don't think we're showing that part. Later on, he tries to kind of turn down the temperature at the very end. I think the Israeli people are good people, and I beg you. I don't. Fuck it. Why were you having a concert outside a concentration camp? I still am trying to get an answer to that.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I don't think so either. Like, I don't want violence against non-combatants.
I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, I don't wish violence on people.
The idea that you can believe in this settler colonial project and still be on the side of the angels as long as you just stop bombing Palestinians. I mean, it looks like we're going to hold this for Thursday. But we're going to cover an article that was in the Washington Post about how all these so-called liberal Israelis who were against Netanyahu and were protesting and were thinking about leaving Israel have all found their inner Zionist in this crisis. There are no liberal Israelis by definition. It's a right-wing political project. You cannot be aligned to it and be liberal by any meaningful definition of that word.
No, of course.
Incredible nation, and it's the only democracy in the Middle East that
democracy.
And you all the time use that as the example of why they should be held to a different standard than Hamas. You talk out of both sides of your mouth on this issue constantly. You say they're a democracy, so that's why they have to be held to a different standard. Then I call them a democracy, and you laugh mockingly at the only democracy that is our allies in that region. It's so ridiculous and egregious.
No, it's because there are allies in the region that we have to hold them to a different standard. I'm speaking for myself, not Cenk here. Obviously, I don't watch TYT, so I don't know, all that he has to say about this. It's not because they're a democracy that we hold them to that standard. It's because of what you just said. It's because they're our ally in the region.
Right.
They are accountable to us, and therefore we are accountable to them. So we must take an interest in their conduct. We have to hold them to a high standard because they're our quote-unquote ally. That's the point.
Well, that's a lot of people will bring up. And listen, China shills, both our actual viewer and just China shills generally, I don't want to get into it. But people will bring up, well, why don't you care about China and the Uyghurs? Whatever you believe about the truth of that, let's assume for a moment that it's true. They're not our ally. They're like our frenemy at best. We're not funding them. We're not funding them to do their whatever they're doing inside of their country. It is literally out of our control. This is not
like a theoretical exercise in defending democracy and holding democratic countries to democratic standards. This has to do with a very simple dynamic. They are a client state of the United States, and therefore we have to take an interest in how they conduct themselves. That's why.
Well, but a lot of Zionists will raise that to show how inherent the anti-Semitism of people's concern about this particular genocide is. What about this? What about this? What about this? I mean, I raise issues about Saudi Arabia and our alliance with that. I think a lot of people on the left do. Right. We were raising those issues around Yemen. We were just talking about it on Jimmy's show when I was hosting. We showed starving children in Yemen, and Saudi Arabia is largely responsible for that. So it is brought up in the context of other countries when we have some influence, when we are in some way responsible. We sold the arms to Saudi Arabia to put Yemen in the state it is today.
Exactly.
And despite all of the evidence shown and all of the tactics that the IDF takes under the advisement of what it needs to do to try to attain its objectives militarily, it does a litany of things that no other nation does. It's an average of 2.5 civilians killed to military combatants compared to a typical ratio of other wars that is much higher compared to American wars that's 10-1, 12-1. Yet those numbers do not bother you. You say
what
that
do you mean they don't bother me? I did a decade of shows against that.
Those numbers don't affect your opinion of what's going on now, I meant to say. And you
not only that, but those are almost certainly bullshit numbers. That's assuming Israel has taken out 9,000 Hamas fighters, which is of course what they're going to say.
Right.
But does anybody really believe that? And once you add the number of Palestinian civilians who are not listed as dead yet because they are missing and unaccounted for, that ratio gets even higher. And so, the idea that he's citing that is just, just absolutely insane.
Well, he's Israeli.
Of course. Right. And then when Cenk or this other guest on the panel, I don't know who he is, will cite numbers from the Gaza Ministry of Health, he'll say, well, that's a Hamas number, so you can't take that seriously. Right. But he wants us to take his number seriously, 2.5-1, which is just, it's just absurd. Well, it's absurd. They're leafleting. They're leafleting the homes before they bomb them, right, to warn the civilians. Well, if you're leafleting before you bomb, aren't you warning Hamas? So you really think you've killed 9,000 of them? It's just absurd. It's just, on its face, that's a ridiculous claim.
Well, it's amazing. They just keep sticking with the same propaganda. Well, all of these organizations trust the Gaza Ministry of Health numbers.
The Washington Post trusts the Gaza Ministry of Health.
Post. Yeah. Hardly a virulent, anti-Israel newspaper.
Right. All right, let's keep going.
Now I meant to say. And you then also just make up that they're clearly trying to get the Gazan people into Egypt and displace them when that is not true. There have been some insane statements from some elements in the Israeli government that are not the official position of the government. That is not what the statement is.
Like from one that run Israel? like the prime minister, the defense minister. Yeah.
Like from Yoav Gallant, Benjamin Netanyahu, Ben Gvir, you mean like the ones running the government have made the insane statements that we need to displace the Palestinians? Just unbelievable. Really unbelievable.
Egypt and displace them when that is not true. There have been some insane statements from some elements in the Israeli government that are not the official position of the government. That is not what the statement of Netanyahu
said from the river to the sea.
He said from the river to the sea, they need to have control of their security.
Okay, so he's referencing, I'm sorry to keep pausing it. We will let this air out a bit in a moment. But Benjamin Netanyahu said basically we need Israeli control over land from the river to the sea. That's what he's referencing there. Literally. Put it up there. Yep.
What are you talking about?
That's exactly what the Palestinians say. When we say from the river to the sea, they say it's political. But when it's a Muslim,
exactly not
genocide. No, they didn't actually do it. When it's Israel, when they're actually doing the genocide, no. From the river to the sea, as they're in the middle of the genocide,
that is
you
such
think no big deal, no big deal.
That is such an ignorant statement. When the Palestinians say from the river to the sea, they literally are saying without Jews and Israelis living there and pushing them into the sea.
That's wrong. That's wrong. Russell, you had the poll on this.
Jim Zogby tweeted this out that they did polling on this.
Zogby's a very reputable pollster, yeah.
Yes. And when Palestinians were asked if they wanted a one-state solution or a two-state solution, they said a one-state solution, but their idea of it was Jews and Muslims would live together in a democratic state. When they asked Israelis, they also wanted a one-state solution with no Palestinians in the state. That would be entirely a Jewish state.
Right. So what Ben Gleib said there is just absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Completely backwards.
Where's this monster is actually killing them, butchering them?
Because that's why you've condemned the statement.
You've got a theoretical statement on one side, and on the other side you're actually butchering.
So why did you condemn the statement? Because you know that's what it means. That's why you condemned it.
Why don't you condemn?
If I had to guess, Cenk Uygur has condemned the statement because he's a big pussy and he wants to placate more centrist elements, not just of his audience, but this is the game he likes to play a lot. This is why he's so against the defund the police stuff. Because, it's going to be interpreted to mean something more militant than it is, and so just don't say it at all. That would be my guess as to why he said you shouldn't say from the river to the sea. That would be my guess there.
Netanyahu, that monster who just said from the river to the sea.
He's not saying that they need to displace the Palestinians.
Here, Ben. You're the most biased man in America.
I do condemn Netanyahu.
Muslims can't say it. But the Israelis can say it all day long as they do it. They're murdering Palestinians as we speak.
They need to disavow a fundamentalist belief that wants to kill all Jews as a disease and not allow them to live. That might not bother you, but it does bother me as an Israeli Jew.
That's such a weak excuse. I'll tell you why.
My people,
yes, I'll tell you why.
Please.
Because you always hide, like as if Israel's a tiny little country.
It is.
And they're so defenseless. They're so, oh my God, they can't do anything against the all-powerful Palestinians.
I'm here in New Orleans right now. And you know what they got around the corner on Magazine Street? Stein's Jewish Deli. We don't need you. We'll be just fine. Right. Stein's Deli here in the deep South. And you know what? I went in there and it was fucking packed. I'm a little mad about it because they take away your New Yorker card if you go places like this and they have a place like that and you don't try it. You have to, it's like your civic responsibility.
Right.
So that you can report back to the other New Yorkers about what you found out in the land beyond the Hudson River. So now I have to try it. And usually those things are going to suck. We'll see. But that was one of the most remarkable things in the Washington Post article about the supposedly liberal Zionists. One of them describing their conversion says, I realized we have to be here because they perceive all of the pro-Palestinian protests as anti-Semitic. And it's making them realize all the stories from our grandparents about pogroms and Holocaust. Now it's happening. So I have a responsibility as a Jew to help fight to keep Israel here for all the other Jews to come to Israel and have a refuge. Okay, crazy pants, listen. If the world situation is such that they got to close up the deli over here and Katz's has to go out of business in New York, that is going to mean that anti-Semitism in the West has grown to such a level, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to defend whatever Jews make their way to Israel, because that would mean that America turned on you too.
Right.
So how would Israel protect the Jews in a situation like that?
Right.
If that's your rationale, do me a favor, don't protect me.
Well, this is what Hitchens called Zionism superstitious for largely that reason, right? That is a superstitious idea that if we create a state, then and only then will we be safe. Well, think about that. Think about the logic of that, as Russell just kind of laid out.
It's the Hanukkah story. It fucked them up. They all want to be the Maccabees.
Right.
Who they imprison and take away their water, power, electricity, murder them at all terms, etc. No. If someone was actually trying to kill the Jews, Ben, I would line up in the front line with you. Are you crazy?
They just did that on October 7th.
Exactly. So you go
and they just did it while I was there. They just killed a bunch of people.
So why don't you care about Palestinian lives, Ben?
Of course I do.
24,000 dead, 10,000 children.
No,
of course you don't care about them. You don't care about them at all.
Cenk, you can shout all you like, but you are the one condemning them to murder. So why don't you care about their lives?
Condemning them to murder?
You're condemning them to a never-ending cycle.
The perversion of that is just unbelievable. You're just acting as if Israel has no agency or autonomy in how they respond. For those who are new to the program, Russell and I, a couple of Jews ourselves, right? I sent my kids to a Jewish daycare. Safety was a concern. I don't dismiss these kinds of concerns, but the way you could respond is through targeting the people who did it to you. Israel has our whole intelligence network at their service if they want it. There is absolutely no reason or excuse to do what they've done and then claim that that is the only method of self-defense that they are capable of engaging in. I mean, that's just absolute nonsense. It's just absolute nonsense. And so he's saying, well, it's what? It's the civilians' fault, or it's inevitable that this was going to be the response, and that it's our fault because we don't start and end every sentence with condemnation of Hamas. It's our fault that this is happening because the inevitable response of the Israeli state had to be to do this. I mean, it's just so sick. It's just so sick.
No, they just tell themselves, even I know liberal Israelis. Their view is that the Palestinians are plagued by bad leadership.
Right.
Well, how did that leadership get there? They literally drove suitcases of cash to Hamas.
Right.
Yes. Nobody that I know thinks, Hamas is a great organization. But you literally put them in power in order to avoid negotiating for a state. It's your fault that they're there.
Right. Of course. Of course. Israel has all the autonomy, which means they have all the agency. Which means everything that's done is done at Israel's choosing, which means they are accountable for what they do, not the Palestinians and not the people who advocate for the Palestinian cause. I mean, it's as simple as could be. Almost done.
Look, I'm no fan of Cenk Uygur. But these days, man, the fatter he gets and the older he gets, I get worried for him. When he goes into these fucking routines, man,
yeah, you gotta be careful.
I'm always ready for him to keel over.
Watch that ticker. Maybe this is why he didn't do on the ground campaigning in New Hampshire. Maybe he was afraid to get too worked up.
Maybe.
You know?
You're condemning them to a never-ending cycle. Palestinians. Palestinians.
By advocating for the Palestinians, you're condemning them to murder because Israel is only capable of responding to that advocacy with increasing levels of barbaric violence. That's what he's saying there.
Palestinians. You are condemning Palestinians to murder. Because every time I suggest that you put any pressure or the world puts any pressure on Hamas to stop, you say they're terrorists. You can't ever tell them to stop. So you can only tell Israel to stop, which, as you know, for a goddamn fact, means that this war will end, Hamas will regroup, they will kill more Israelis, and Israel will kill more Palestinians. And that's what you want. That's what you're advocating for.
Insane, Ben.
That's exactly what you're advocating
I want a two-state solution where you actually have peace.
So do I.
But not.
Oh, there, he just said it. That was the point you were making.
All right, so understand, this guy on the right, this is what we're funding. This is what we're funding. That's an Israeli. That's what we're funding.
Yeah.
Because you push Israelis. He's pretty representative. Like that's left for an Israeli. That's a left Israeli. That's what we are funding with our tax dollars.
And
that's a horrible statement he makes, and that should not be the position.
Terrorist, right?
But you add, no, not terrorist.
Of course he's a terrorist. He just said from the river to the sea, and he's actually doing it.
He said
he's 20 times a terrorist than Hamas
I will be with you if he actually encourages.
He's doing it, Ben. What more do you need? 48,000?
Not one person's been displaced out of Gaza.
Are you insane?
Out of Gaza, not one.
Out of Gaza,
not
sorry.
one.
It's squished into
but
a
that's
little
what you're
corner
saying
where they're being
doing.
bombed.
That's what you're saying he's doing. Why doesn't Egypt allow any refugees? Why
because that's the displacement.
No,
voluntary
displacement, like happens in every war. At the beginning of
voluntary. Did you just say that was a voluntary displacement?
What was? No, if the possibility of going into Egypt would be voluntary, like in the first month of the Ukraine-Russia war, 5.9 million people were allowed in, but for some reason, the Gazan people's neighbors, their fellow Muslims, don't allow them in. Not one person. They condemn them to death.
That's the ethnic cleansing when you drive them from their homes.
During war, temporary displacement.
Not during war. So there you go. The book ends that segment on the ethnic cleansing point.
If they ever make a Gene Wilder biopic, this guy has a future.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Are
They're
you
not
telling
being
me I
from
put an
Gaza?
abnormal brain?
It's not ethnic
he's like
cleansing, and it's not forced relocation and displacement because they've not been displaced out of Gaza. They've been displaced from the north to the south, where they're now being bombed in the south with fewer places to go and less space to maneuver because you have 2.1 million people trapped in a zone that is half the size that they were trapped in before, which was already one of the most densely populated areas on Earth. And you're not going to call that ethnic cleansing? You're not going to call that displacement? You're going to call that voluntary displacement? And it's not ethnic cleansing because it's happening during war and it's only temporary? I mean, that is just absolutely deranged. I mean, what Cenk said, he said, what are you, insane? I mean, yeah.
And they are. Because you cannot square these circles. And when they try, they sound insane. Because how can you justify this? How can you justify this? And because most Zionists see themselves as liberal, that's where it gets really crazy. Like if you're just a fascist, you say exterminate all the brutes. At least there's a logic to it. But these guys, they have to sound like they're caring, decent people. They have to, while they genocide a people and support a fascist apartheid state. How do you do that? That's like trying to be a good Nazi.
Right.
You're the compassionate Nazi. Right. Well, if we didn't have them in the concentration camps, they'd be in danger from the population. We need to protect the Jews by putting them in the camps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just, that was unbelievable. I didn't know that he was such a Zionist like that. I had only seen Ben Gleib a handful of times. I even forgot pretty much who he was.
Obviously, there are exceptions. We've seen Ilan Pappé and some other brave voices, but mostly you talk to an Israeli, man. You scratch, even if they come off as they want to be reasonable, you push those buttons, man. They'll turn into that very quickly.
Yep. Indeed. Cool Blue, thanks for the $4.99. When the D's got away with rigging their primaries, I repudiated them. I closed the door on the D's. The R's have a good chance with me, and I am in Bellwether, Michigan. Interesting, Cool Blue. I didn't know you were from Michigan. Maybe I forgot.
Might be coming up there, man. Yeah, you have a garage for us, sir?
Yeah, right, exactly. John M. in Minnesota should have kept it as single payer. Yes, you're talking about the Medicare for All language. Riff Sife, thanks for the $10. Someone I know tried to say Biden actually does support Medicare for All. I showed them video of him saying he'd veto it. Their response, I don't think that's what he meant. It truly is a cult. Yeah, indeed. Indeed, my friend. Joe
Charlie
Cavara?
didn't mean all the pigs.
Right. I meant Walking Death Rattle. Oh, is that an edit from a previous super chat, Joe? Thank you for that. Natalie Williams, my contention, any ism is only as good as those in charge. Thank you, Natalie.
Right. That's why I don't believe in communism.
Kevin Hudson, thanks for the $5. Please no more PMC NPCs from New Hampshire in Canada. Yeah. Looking forward to the next narcissist summit of Trudeau and Trump. Boo Boo 2525H, thanks for the $5. Since Jimmy and Alex have buried the hatchet, how much do you think it would cost to get Jimmy to spit iced tea on Cenk? I don't know if they congregate in the same spaces anymore.
Yeah,
so
I don't think they
that's
run into
possible.
each other much.
No. Keaton, I understand why you would travel to Israel, but have you given any consideration to visiting the Jew tunnels in New York City? No, I'm actually quite claustrophobic. I wouldn't do with underground tunnels. Yeah, I don't like being in like enclosed spaces like that.
I still have these fucking rejects from the Stormfront bake sale fucking tagging me in tweets of the tunnels with fucking, editing and cuts that look like they came from the fucking Chud movie from the 80s. That looks real.
Where are you talking about?
That looks
on
very
X?
credible. On X,
on Twitter?
I get tagged in these fucking things. It's like, come on, man. There have been communities of Jews that have had molestation scandals, like every other community. Like that's what my Jew Tunnels 2 piece was about. Like, yeah, man, if you think because that happened in segments of the community that Jews are particularly prone to it or the religion is built around it, yeah, that's fucking anti-Semitic, because we live in a world where these things happen in so many different communities. Like, why, when it happens in that community, do you think it implies something about the whole community? I mean, even though they kicked me out of Hebrew school, listen, man, I grew up in that community. No one diddled my whittle. It didn't happen to me.
I think they built them to get away from the cops.
I don't know you like that. I don't get the impression they took you behind the mikveh or anything. So.
No. Well, I wasn't in Hebrew school at all. But in New York, I know that, people would use underground tunnels to, get away from the cops, like back in the bootlegging days.
Back in the day,
they would use tunnels and shit like that. So if during the lockdowns, if they were congregating and worshiping in groups when they weren't supposed to be, hey, maybe they built a little escape hatch, the cops break it up, down the tunnel. Could be. Hump, thanks for the $5. If Kanye had only waited 6 months to start railing on the Sand people, he would still be in the Bezos Club. Love the show. Thank you, Hump. Appreciate that very much. Thomas Hilberg became a new member. Thank you, Thomas Hilberg. Appreciate that. We appreciate that very much, everybody. By the way, I'll post the Rumble link right now, or the link to the Rumble site here. DoDissidents.com/Rumble. That goes right to our live stream over on Rumble. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to join us for our post-show Q&A after party over on Rumble, you want to head over there in just a few minutes, because as soon as we get done with the super chats, that's where we will be headed. Fret Pound, thanks for the $4.99. Wash was planning on super chatting, so congratulations on sucking that money out of my ace. All right, we got a couple people telling us that today. Interesting use of words there. Axel, thanks for the $5. Why in the hell would Israel lay waste to areas where Israeli hostages would be if they actually cared about the hostages? I never get a response. It's a good question too.
All right, I'm gonna answer quickly. I'm not gonna go on a rant. I'm gonna quickly answer this. If you've noticed, Sam, I haven't said anything about that, and I've said for a while, I'm going to do my own research, which you're not supposed to do, but I have a doctor's note. I'm doing my own research into the Uyghurs. The thing is, right when I started doing that research, October 7th happened. And I prioritized learning more about the Middle East. So I haven't gotten to. That's why you haven't heard me say much about it. But if you notice, the way I framed that was, hey, whatever, I don't want to litigate what happened. And the reason for that is I haven't had time to do that research.
All right. Soccer Papa, thanks for the $4.99. The U.S. sided with Al-Qaeda against the Houthis. It started under Nobel laureate Obama in 2015. Tusker, I feel like I should step in here and ask the only question that matters. Have you both turned towards Israel and condemned Hamas today? Not yet. I've been pretty tired, actually. I got to tell you.
I've been just eating gumbo, red beans, and rice. I mean, that shit'll make you tired. Actually.
Yeah, Russell's got a food coma going.
I've got like a low grade constant food coma going on right now.
Yeah. Poor dollar store J. Crew can't get a word in. Yeah, you're talking about the guy on the side of the frame. Yeah, he didn't talk too much. It's hard, between Cenk and that guy going at it. It is hard to get a word in edgewise in that room. China shill about Uyghurs. Nope, just read Gray Zone. Thank you, Sam. 72 Marshflower 15. Talmud allows bad things with toddlers. No lie. YouTube. What the Talmud says about 12-minute video. All right. Fair enough. My bad. All right, Sam. No problem. Brendan McNamara, if ethnic cleansing of Gaza is voluntary relocation, then Cherokee Trail of Tears counts as an all-expense paid vacation. Indeed. Okay, let's take some Rumble rants, and then we will head over to Rumble for our post-show Q&A. Thank you guys all very much for being here tonight. You can go to dudissidents.com/Rumble to join us for the after party. You guys will be able to call in if you're a patron, a paid Substacker, or a paid Locals member. If not, you'll be able to submit questions in the chat, and we will be hanging out for a bit after the show. Blank state. Leftism does not equal statism, Russell. Socialism is worker ownership of the means of production in one's work, and the equitable yield of one's labor produces. Manufactured ignorance is a tool of the powerful.
I don't know if you've ever eaten with a communist. It's disgusting. They don't even know how to use the silverware. They just shove it in. It's gross. They don't even wipe.
Killers of the Flower Moon just leaves you. Thank for the $20. It's very generous. Just leaves you rolling with anger and thinking to yourself, "Effing white people." That said, I'm glad to have seen it. I'd rather know than not know. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a Scorsese movie. It's an epic. It looks interesting. I would not pay $20 to watch it on demand, which is what they were asking for it before. But yeah, I'll watch it. Seems worthwhile. Anybody watch Electronic Intifada share Al-Qassam videos from Gaza? IDF in windows, tanks, and tunnels versus ghosts in sandals with homemade RPGs. No. No. Matthew Ho shared something along those lines, but I don't think that's what it was. But I did see something like that today. I think it was from Matthew Ho's account. Matthew Ho, the Green Party candidate for, what did he run for? Senate in North Carolina? Yeah, Senate. Okay. Beautiful. We have 1,455 if you find people over there on Rumble. We will see the rest of you over there in about 5 minutes if you want to join. So we're going to take a 5-minute intermission, switch to Rumble for our post-show Q&A. If you are not up for the Q&A, we will see you tomorrow if you're a patron at 10 a.m. And if not, we will see you back here 9 a.m. Thursday morning, January 25th. So we got 3 shows in 3 days for all of you lovely folks. We thank you very much for being here tonight. Once again, if you want to hang out with us for the Q&A, dudissidents.com/Rumble. If you are a patron or a paid member, you can call in now. The phone lines are now open. We will see you guys all in 5 minutes if you're joining us for the after party. If not, we'll see you whenever we see you next. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.